The stag. The forest was alive, and it had been waiting for Heartborn. I felt it in the way the wind stilled as he stepped between the trees, like even the air had paused to make room for him. The animals went quiet. The earth beneath my hooves shivered with recognition, as if the land itself had been holding its breath, waiting for him to return. I had been alive for 1,000 years, 1,000 winters, 1,000 blood-warm springs. I had hunted in those woods, killed in them. I had buried things there that no one should ever speak of. The trees, the soil, they had known me. But at night, beneath the pale rise of the moon, they turned to him. And he hadn't even known I existed. He had walked beneath branches I once bled for, moved through glades that had once echoed with my voice, and he had done it all with that same quiet grace, that same light I was never meant to hold. He had been promised to my brother, cherished by him, claimed by him. But what no one had known, what not even he had known, was that he had always been mine. Long before my brother laid eyes on him, long before his name was ever spoken aloud, Heartborn had been mine in the hush between heartbeats, in the ache I never let surface, in the way I watched him from the shadows, year after year, and never once reached out. And maybe I never would. But the forest had remembered, and so had I.
Welcome to the official YouTube channel of J.K. Jones, where listeners can enjoy romance audiobooks for free. Please like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest releases. This audiobook is protected by copyright law. No part of it may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including recording or electronic methods, without the prior written consent of the author. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is purely coincidental. To support ongoing content creation, consider joining the Patreon. Every contribution helps keep the stories alive.
Prologue. Glens Hollow, Ireland, late autumn. There was a knock at the door. I froze, my hands still dusted with flour, fingertips sticky with cinnamon and sugar. The rolling pin almost slipped from my grip, but I placed it aside with shaking hands. The pie was already in the oven, apple, spiced just the way Greta at the bakery liked it, meant for her early morning rush. It would burn if I didn't take it out right now, but I couldn't move. The knock came again. Patient and controlled, the kind of knock that belonged to someone who had delivered bad news before. I walked to the door, my heart pounding harder with each step, a growing weight in my chest, making it difficult to breathe. Somewhere deep inside me, a part I rarely acknowledged, already understood what was coming. It curled in on itself, bracing for the blow. When I opened the door, the first thing I noticed was the uniform. A Garda officer stood there, rain dripping from the brim of his cap, his coat soaked across the shoulders. He looked young, too young to be standing in front of me with the kind of words that would change everything. "Mr. O'Fauline?" he asked. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight and useless. There was a car accident, Highway 687, a pileup involving several vehicles. The denial rose instantly, soundless and instinctive. "An 18-wheeler jackknifed across the road and crushed the car," he continued, his voice gentler now, as though afraid his words might break me. "He was killed on impact. The body was barely recognizable." The words didn't make sense at first. They seemed distant, detached from reality, hanging in the air like a dense fog that refused to lift. I stared at him, waiting for him to correct himself, to say there had been a mistake, a wrong name, a wrong car, anything that would unravel what he had just said. But he remained still. The breath left my lungs all at once, like I'd been struck hard in the chest. My knees threatened to give out, and I reached for the doorframe, flour smearing across the wood as my fingers closed around it. My engagement ring bit sharply into the skin of my knuckle. Somewhere behind me, the oven timer went off, loud and shrill against the silence. The apple pie was burning. Chapter 1. Caelen. 6 months later. Mom, not that one. Too late. She already had her hands on the navy sweater with the crookedly stitched antlers. The one I wore every other day in high school, even after the cuffs frayed and the neck got weirdly stretched out. "Oh, this one's going in the drawer," she said with that sing-song finality only mothers had. "Can't believe you left it behind. Your grandmother would have boxed your ears." I sighed and flopped onto the edge of the bed. I left it behind for a reason. It smells like wet dog and failure. She ignored me and kept folding. "You wore it every day after you had that dream, remember? The one with the stag." "No," I lied. I remembered it too well. "You said he was glowing, antlers like silver lightning, great hooves pounding the mountain stone. You cried when you woke up." "Thanks for bringing that up." "Oh, hush, you were only 10. She opened the window a crack, letting in the scent of moss and distant rain. The air outside was heavy, like the land was holding its breath. I watched her, waiting. She always told the story when it got like this, when the sky darkened early and the wind whistled just right, when she felt the magic pressing in around us. She turned, hands on hips, eyes soft. "You want to hear it again?" "No," I said. She told it anyway. "They say there was once a white stag who roamed the highest peaks, long before the first stone huts were raised or the first roads paved. Not albino, not sickly, white like the moon through snow. Tall as a horse, antlers wide enough to shadow 3 men, he came in the mist. No one could catch him, not even the best hunters. In our world, shifting wasn't rare. But being born with antlers that glowed under moonlight, that was old magic, stag magic, and it ran in my bloodline whether I wanted it or not." I said nothing. The way she spoke it, soft and reverent, made my throat go tight. She went on. "But he wasn't just a beast. He was one of us, one of the old ones, deer folk, the ones who could walk like men by day and run wild by night. The stag was their guardian, their king. They say he only appeared when danger was coming, when something wrong stirred in the woods. And what? He just shows up and everything's fixed?" Her lips twitched. "Not fixed, just foretold. He's a warning, Caelen, a sign that the world's about to shift, that the blood in our bones is waking up." I stared at her, throat dry. "That's a lot of pressure to put on a deer." She chuckled and brushed past me, ruffling my hair like I was still 5. "There's more to us than flesh, boy. You do well to remember that." As she left the room, the sweater still sat folded at the foot of my bed. And outside, past the tree line and the fog-wrapped hills, the world felt just a little less quiet. I sat on the bed, staring out the window. The rain streaked the glass, soft and cold, matching the fog inside my head. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular, just a dull throb behind my ribs, a gnawing ache that never went away. But then, as if on cue, the silence cracked open, and there he was, Niamh, smiling. His crooked grin, the one he'd wear when he caught me staring too long. The gentle curve of his lips when he was teasing me about my baking obsession. The way his dark eyes lit up every room without even trying. God, his laugh. I could almost hear it now, faint, like it was echoing from another world. And then the image shifted, the coffin, the wreaths, the way my legs gave out at the funeral, the smell of lilies, the silence after they lowered him into the ground. I gasped like I'd been punched in the stomach, and the sob burst out of me before I could stop it. I curled forward, gripping my arms so tight my fingers went numb, hugging myself like I could hold the pieces together if I just squeezed hard enough. But it didn't work. I was shattering, splintering. Every inhale was jagged, every exhale a whimper, and I couldn't stop shaking. "I can't do this," I whispered to the empty room. The bed creaked under my weight, my forehead pressed to my knees. My mom had already comforted me, already forced me to move back in with her, but I couldn't keep burdening her with this. I needed Niamh. I didn't want to survive this, not without him, not in this cold little town with its empty bakery and its ghost stories and the creak of wind in the trees. I was alone, and worse, I deserved to be. I stayed curled on the bed long after the tears dried up, my arms still tight around myself like I could hold the pieces together if I just squeezed hard enough. But the world didn't stop turning, and eventually I had to get up. The next morning, I dragged myself out of the house and into the bakery. Bramble and Hearth wasn't much, a tired old place with cracked tiles, a faded sign swinging loose on its hinges, and a smell that was more mildew than fresh bread. Most folks preferred the new artisanal cafes in town. Fancy drinks, fancy faces, the kind of place where they'd never let a broken man behind the counter. But this was home. The bell jingled as the door slammed open. I looked up to see Ronan McDwyn swagger in, his usual smirk stuck on his face like he owned the place. Behind him, his hunting buddies followed, loud and laughing like they were out looking for trouble. Ronan filled the doorway like he owned the place. Broad shoulders, thick arms, and a walk that said he dragged more than just deer through the woods. His short beard was a mess of brown and gold, messy curls poking out from under a worn camo cap. He smelled like sweat, pine, and something sharp, like danger or trouble. Well, Caelen O'Filean, he called out. Didn't think you'd crawl out from behind your damn oven. I wiped flour off my hands, raising an eyebrow. Funny, I was about to say the same. Still wasting everyone's damn air, MacDoin? He grinned, stepping up to the counter. Give me a dozen of those flaky croissants. You know, the ones that match your lips. Soft, flaky, Too bad you're all sharp edges, though. What do you need a brain for with lips like that, anyway? I blinked, caught off guard but smirking. Real subtle, Ronan. Did your charm get lost in the woods, too? Screw subtle. I'm straight to the point. Like your mouth should be wrapped around something better than bread. I rang up his order, shaking my head. 1 dozen insults coming right up. Want extra sass with that? He laughed, loud and cocky. You're all attitude, Caelen. I like it. Sliding the box across the counter, I smirked. Don't expect me to stick around for your second course. You're hiding, Caelen. Don't bother pretending. I know exactly why. I tightened my grip on the counter. And I'm sure you're real proud of yourself for being the town's nosiest prick. His smirk deepened, eyes darkening. Maybe. But don't worry. I'll be sticking around, whether you like it or not. I turned away, kneading dough with more force than necessary, hoping the noise drowned out the way my heart stuttered. The last thing I wanted was company, especially from Ronan McDwyn. The door swung open again, and more men poured in, their heavy boots thudding against the cracked floorboards. The small bakery quickly filled with a rowdy crowd, rough, lean hunters clad in worn leather jackets and thick woolen scarves, their faces weathered from wind and work. Some had tangled beards. Others wore scars that told silent stories of past fights and close calls. They carried the scent of damp earth, gun oil, and smoke, men who belonged to the wild. I frowned, wiping my hands on my apron, unease prickling my skin. The warmth of the bakery felt suddenly suffocating, as if the air had thickened around them. Ronan, I said, who are all these lads? Hunters, he said, local crew mostly. But this isn't just any hunt, we're after a very special prize. I arched an eyebrow. Hunters? It's illegal to hunt deer in these parts. Ronan laughed, a dry, dangerous sound. Normally, yeah, but this... He glanced around conspiratorially, then back to me. This comes with special permission. The mayor's turned a blind eye, thanks to some heavy backing in Parliament. Let's just say I know people who make sure we get to run wild. His eyes swept over the room, landing on each eager face. We've been tracking a pure white stag, the Fionn Bacach. Been spotted near the mountains. It's caused all kinds of trouble, springing traps, spooking game, even scaring a few villagers. His smirk deepened. They say it's a symbol, an omen, but to us, it's the kind of trophy you'd give anything to catch. My heart tightened. The stories my mother used to tell me about the white stag, the deer folk, they weren't just myths anymore. And now, here was Ronan, standing in my bakery, leading a pack of men with permission to hunt what should have been sacred. I forced myself to step away from the growing crowd, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. The warm smell of flour and yeast couldn't mask the weight pressing down on my chest. Behind the counter, the quiet of the kitchen wrapped around me like a fragile shield. I reached for the loaves and pastries on the shelves, my hands moving on autopilot while my thoughts spun in circles. A pure white stag, the fiambakash, the legends, the warnings, my mother's voice echoing in my head about guardians and omens. But here were Ronan and his crew, authorized by power and politics to chase it down, to kill what should be protected. I should hate them, I should fear them, but instead a hollow ache settled deep inside, something more complicated. I handed off the last tray and wiped the counter down with a damp cloth, pretending not to notice how Ronan kept glancing my way. The man had a grin like he owned the town, and maybe in some twisted way he did. Between his father's money, his mother's seat in Parliament, and the Major's spineless approval, he could get away with nearly anything. I was halfway through telling Greta, the owner, that I was heading out early when she just waved me off, eyes on the clock like it owed her something. The bakery had emptied again, Ronan's party taking their food with them to prepare for whatever blood sport passed for a noble tradition these days. I stepped outside, apron slung over my shoulder, and lit a cigarette with a flick of my thumb. The wind tugged at my sleeves, and dusk had started to smear the sky in bruised purples and rust reds. The streets were nearly empty now, just a few parked cars and the echo of laughter around the corner. And then everything went still, not quiet, still, like the world took a breath and held it. He stood at the edge of the lot, near the twisted willow tree, half shadowed by the building next door. The stag, tall as a horse, maybe taller. His coat shimmered, not like snow, but like starlight on fresh ash. White, but not clean. Old, sacred. Eyes the color of burnt honey locked on mine, unblinking. The cigarette slipped from my fingers. We stared at each other. No twitch, no fear. He didn't bolt, just watched me as if he'd known I would come out at that exact moment, like I'd been expected. My heart pounded, not with fear, something colder, a kind of reverence I didn't want to admit to. Then the stag's ears twitched, his muscles coiled, not with panic but purpose, and he turned, disappearing into the tree line with unnatural grace. I was left standing there with the scent of smoke on my coat and the undeniable feeling that something had just begun. Chapter 2. Caelen. I saw the stag in my dreams, and I wept, not from fear, not even sorrow, but something deeper, older, like my soul had remembered something my waking self had long since forgotten. The stag stood in a clearing bathed in moonlight, its antlers aglow like frost-tipped branches, reaching toward the stars. Mist swirled around its hooves, rising off the mountain ledge where it waited, still as stone, solemn as a priest. But it wasn't alone. There, just beyond it, standing at the foot of a jagged cliff that bled silver beneath the moon, was him. My love. He looked exactly as I remembered, and nothing like him at all. Dressed in dark furs, his silhouette shimmered with the same ghost light that crowned the stag's antlers. His eyes met mine across the distance, full of longing and recognition and something else. A warning, maybe, or a plea. He raised a hand, palm outward. I tried to move toward him, but my legs sank into the earth like it meant to keep me. My voice cracked as I called his name, though I didn't know it. Not anymore. The syllables slipped away like water through cupped hands. The stag turned its head to me then, golden eyes luminous and ancient, and in them I saw a road, winding, cold, and treacherous, cutting through frost-bitten hills and bramble-choked woods. I saw fire. I saw blood. I saw myself with antlers like a crown and fur on my hands where skin should be. I woke with tears streaming down my cheeks. The pillow beneath my head was damp. Outside, the wind howled like it too had seen something it couldn't explain. I went to the bakery the next morning, the sun just barely rising above the rooftops, casting everything in a pale gold light that felt too soft for how raw I still felt. The dream clung to me like smoke, its edges fraying, but the feeling needle sharp as ever, like something had followed me out of it. I unlocked the back door and stepped inside. The smell of flour and yeast should have comforted me, but it didn't. Not today. Something was wrong. I couldn't place it, just this low hum in the back of my skull, like a wire pulled too tight. There was a tug in my chest, a whisper, not words exactly, but a pull, a call. It came from the woods. The forest behind the bakery had always been just trees to me, dense, dark, and full of mosquitoes. But this morning it felt like it was watching me, breathing with me. I frowned and shook my head, trying to snap out of it. "Get it together," I muttered, slapping my hands against my thighs. "You didn't sleep. That's all this is." I turned back toward the kitchen, meaning to get started on the morning prep, but I froze the second I did. There was a man standing across the road, old, hunched. His clothes hung off him in damp grey folds. He looked like he hadn't bathed in months, maybe years. His hair long and matted, clumped into oily tufts. But it was his face that made my stomach clench. A gap-toothed smile stretched across his mouth, his lips peeling back too wide, like he was laughing at a joke no one else could hear. And his eyes, Jesus, his eyes weren't right. Black, not just dark, but black, like swirling ink, no whites at all, endless, bottomless. He raised a hand and waved at me, slow and almost fond. I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight. I forced myself to lift my hand and wave back, because what else was I supposed to do? But I took a step back toward the bakery door, my heartbeat hammering. I blinked and he was gone. Just the trees again, the road, empty sidewalk. I stood there for a long time, staring at the spot where he'd been, cold sweat sliding down my spine. I think I'm going crazy. I have to be going crazy, right? The scent of cinnamon and brown sugar clung to my skin as I rolled dough over the floured countertop. Baking was the only thing that made sense lately. I'd filled 2 trays already. Scones, brown bread, oatcakes, my hands working faster than my brain could catch up. "You'll burn a hole in the floor pacing like that," Greta said, elbow deep in a bowl of flour. "I'm not pacing." "You are, sweetheart, but it's nice to see you moving again." She smiled, brushing her fringe from her flour-smudged face. "Smells like home in here again." I cracked an egg, avoiding her gaze. "Suppose that's what I'm going for." Greta tilted her head. "You sleep any better last night?" "Define better." I shoved the dough into the tin. She was quiet a moment. Then, soft as steam rising from a fresh loaf, she said, "I dreamt of Niamh last night." The tray clattered as I shoved it into the oven too hard. I didn't look at her. "Is that so?" "Don't be cross," she said gently. "He was smiling. You were with him. You were laughing." I turned. "Greta?" She bit her lip. "I just thought you should know." "I need some air." I was already peeling off my apron before she could respond. I pushed open the back door, blinking against the sudden light. The air was damp, smelling of moss and peat, the bakery's chimney smoke curling faintly into the pale morning sky. The forest loomed just beyond the lot, tangled and ancient. The trees rustled even though there was no wind. It was like they were breathing. A strange ache stirred in my chest. I took a step forward and then another. The pull was soft at first, like silk, but it tightened with each breath. A thread looped around my lungs, not choking, guiding. "What the hell?" I murmured. I stepped off the gravel and into the grass, shoes dampening with dew. The forest edge whispered my name, though I knew that was impossible. And then I saw him again, not Niamh, the old man. He stood at the edge of the road where I'd seen him earlier. Ragged grey hair, a torn coat, and teeth like chipped gravestones. But it was his eyes, black, swirling like a storm in a drain, that made my spine stiffen. He waved again, slowly, like he knew me. I didn't wave back this time. "Christ," I whispered, shaking myself. "I'm losing it." Still, my feet didn't move. The forest pulsed. The old man smiled and the trees seemed to lean closer. Something was coming, and I wasn't sure I could walk away. I lost myself in the rhythm of kneading dough. Flour dusted the counters, my arms, even the tip of my nose. The scent of cinnamon and butter softened the cold edge inside me, at least for a little while. Greta leaned on the prep table, sipping her tea. "You always did bake like it was therapy," she said, eyeing the trays of scones and shortbread I'd just pulled out of the oven. "You trying to impress someone?" I snorted, just trying not to scream into the void today. This is cheaper than therapy. She smiled gently and reached over to pluck a cooling biscuit. "You should open a real bakery of your own, somewhere by the coast. You and Niamh talked about that once, didn't you?" The name hit like a punch to the chest. I didn't answer, just stared at the dough beneath my hands, suddenly too soft, too warm, like flesh. I swallowed hard, lips pressing into a thin line. Greta's eyes widened. "Oh, Caelen, sorry, I didn't mean—" "It's fine," I lied. I wiped my hands on a towel and stepped back from the table. "Gonna get some air." She said something behind me, but it was muffled, unimportant. Outside, the morning was grey, the clouds heavy like bruises across the sky. The wind stirred faintly, carrying with it a strange scent, like ash and moss. I crossed my arms, staring toward the forest behind the bakery. The trees stood still, but something in them wasn't. I took a step toward the path, and the air tightened around me like a cord. I blinked, chest tightening. It felt like someone had tied a string around my lungs and was tugging gently, urging me forward. "What the hell?" I murmured. I should have turned around, but instead, I kept walking. The forest pulled at me with invisible hands. Every breath I took felt thinner than the last, like the trees were filtering out the air, keeping it for themselves. I didn't even realize how far I'd gone. The bakery was gone. The road was gone. Just bark, moss, and shadow all around me. Then I stepped, and the world tilted. Pain ripped through my ankle, sudden and white-hot. I dropped to the ground, my palms skidding across cold, wet leaves. For a second, I couldn't even scream. My body locked up, frozen in the shock of it. I looked down. A rusted steel trap clung to my leg like a predator's jaw. The teeth had punctured the skin, sunk deep into muscle. Blood poured fast, soaking my sock and pooling beneath my boot. My breath came out shallow, my vision spotted. I grabbed the metal, trying to pull the jaws apart, but they didn't move. My hands slipped. The edges tore my palms. The pain in my leg got sharper with every heartbeat. Bright, shattering bursts behind my eyes. The trap wasn't new. The iron was old, the springs reluctant. But it still held me like it had waited for years just to do this. I pushed harder, biting down on a scream, trying to wedge my fingers between the serrated grooves. The metal cut me back. I gritted my teeth, growling through the agony. My leg jerked once. I thought I felt something tear inside. My stomach turned. I tried again and again. Every attempt sent new shocks of pain through my thigh, my spine, up the back of my neck. My body started to go numb, not from relief, but from fear, from blood loss, from the cold creeping in. The forest stood still around me. No birds, no movement, just the trees, watching. And then I wasn't alone. A figure stood in the clearing ahead, far away, still, watching me bleed. A scream tore through my throat as I struggled to get free. It wasn't just pain anymore. It was panic, raw and ragged. I clawed at the trap, slippery with blood. My own, slick and warm, coated my fingers, ran down my ankle, soaked into the moss below me. It was the stag. It stood between the trees, massive, monstrous in its stillness. Antlers like twisted branches scraped the sky. Its body shimmered, half shadow, half light. Moonlight bled off its flanks like mist. It walked toward me, slow, unstoppable. The light around it warped, pulsed, too bright, too wrong. I couldn't blink it away. My skull throbbed with every step it took. My lungs burned. My heart hammered too fast, too loud. "Help!" I rasped, but it came out broken, wet. The world tilted. The trees pulsed like veins. My fingers felt too far away. Blood kept pouring, every drop dragging me further from myself. I couldn't feel my leg anymore. Just heat, numbness, then cold. I blinked. The stag was above me now. Its breath steamed in the air. The light blurred everything. I couldn't tell where it ended and the sky began. Nima? I whispered. Or maybe I didn't. Maybe I just thought it. I couldn't be sure. The forest twisted. The stars collapsed inward. The light cracked, prickling behind my eyes, then nothing, just black and falling. I woke in a cave, sweat-soaked and trembling. My leg... God. A strangled sob tore up my throat before I could stop it. Pain crashed through me like a wave breaking against rocks, again and again, every breath a punishment. The pressure in my leg, tight, sickening, told me it was crushed, twisted, ruined. Nima, I croaked. Nima. No answer. Just the echo of my own shuddering breaths, bouncing off the stone walls. I screamed. I screamed so hard my throat burned, my chest hitched, my vision stitched in and out like badly cut film. The cave flickered. Black bled into the edges of my sight. Then darkness again. When I came to, the scent of cooked meat drifted toward me, thick and heavy, curling into my nose, dragging me up from the abyss. Shadows danced on the walls, long and alive, flickering from a fire tucked just outside my view. I turned my head, teeth clenched against the pain. And there in the corner was hair red as flame. I blinked, unsure if it was a trick of the fire. Then it moved, a figure, kneeling, skin bathed in gold and scarlet light. The stranger lifted their head, and suddenly I was staring into the greenest eyes I had ever seen. Not just green, verdant, alive. Like spring had taken root behind their gaze. I couldn't speak, I didn't have to. They were already watching me like they'd known me for years. Like they'd been waiting. Chapter 3. Caelen. Who are you? Where am I? My voice rasped like gravel in my throat as I tried to sit up. Pain slammed into my leg like a hammer. I cried out and collapsed back onto the stone. Stay still! My leg! I gasped. Yes, you idiot, the man snapped. He leaned closer, eyes flashing green in the firelight. You stepped on a bear trap. Lucky for you, it was a smaller one. But your toe bone's shattered, middle phalanx, possibly the distal too. You've also got fractures across the second and third metatarsals, judging by the swelling and angle. And that bruising crawling up your shin, hairline cracks in your tibia. Could have lost the foot entirely if I hadn't gotten to you. I swallowed hard, cold sweat trickling down my back. He rummaged through a rough canvas satchel beside the fire and held up a small leather pouch. Now, shut up and let me work. The man crouched beside the fire, laying out a series of strange, brittle plants on a flat piece of slate. I blinked, vision swimming, as he worked in silence. No ceremony, no flourish, just harsh competence. He sliced into a dark root with a jagged blade. Thick resin bled out like syrup. Wormroot, he muttered. Draws out poison, keeps rot away. He ground it with the hilt of his knife, then smeared the pulp onto my wound. The burn was instant, deep and angry. I hissed through my teeth. Next came a bundle of pale silver leaves, fine and thin, shimmering like frost. He crushed them between his fingers. Morning nettle, he said, numbs the nerves. You'll need that. He unstoppered a pouch and released a handful of featherlight spores that shimmered in the firelight. He blew gently, sending them floating down toward the mangled mess of my foot. Thistle blossom. Helps the bone rebind. Magic can't work if the body's too busy screaming. I stared at him, jaw clenched. You're using magic! He didn't answer, just reached for my boot and tugged it into place with slow precision. You passed out long enough for me to thread a stabilizer rune into the heel, he said, more to himself than to me. Crude, but it'll hold. My what? Your boot, he snapped. Don't move. I tried anyway. Fire lanced up my leg and knocked the breath from my lungs. My head dropped back against the dirt. What's your name? I asked after a beat. He froze for a moment, still crouched, then resumed packing up his supplies. Call me Thorn. I've buried more than I care to remember, Thorn said. I don't think I could do it again, not with you. A pause. He dug into a side satchel, pulling out a few more vials and inspecting them one by one. I'll have to ask a Xiling which combo works best on shattered toe joints. She's the expert on compound breaks. Aisling? I asked. He didn't look up. Friend of sorts, don't worry about it. Now hold still, he said. This will hurt a lot. Before I could argue, he shoved a wooden splint between my teeth. The taste of pine and dirt filled my mouth. Try not to scream too loudly, he added, reaching for something behind him. You'll wake the fawns. Then he gripped my foot. I tensed, every muscle in my body locked. He didn't count down. The pain was immediate and blinding, like hot iron being driven through bone. I bit down hard on the splint, eyes burning as he twisted, pushed, set. The world tilted, blurred. His hands were fast, pressing the pulp of the herbs deep into the wound, packing in bitter-smelling powder, wrapping it tight with a strip of waxy bark. My throat worked uselessly around a scream I couldn't make. When it was done, I was shaking. Sweat clung cold to my skin. My chest heaved. He finally removed the splint from my mouth and tossed it into the fire. It blackened on contact. You'll live, he said, not unkindly. Hopefully. I was in and out of it for 2 days, maybe more. Time blurred into a syrupy fog of heat, aching bone and bitter herbs. Thorn fed me. He wiped the sweat from my brow with calloused hands that somehow never trembled. I remember the smell of smoke and the low, steady murmur of his voice as he worked. On the 3rd day, I felt clearer. Not well, but lucid. I could sit up without vomiting and keep my eyes open long enough to take in the space around me. The hut was strange, low ceiling, twisting wood that seemed to grow into the walls, shelves carved into living bark, vials that glowed faintly, bones strung like wind chimes above the door. What is this place? I croaked. My voice sounded like someone else's, hoarse and brittle from disuse. Thorn didn't look up from the mortar he was grinding. We call it Lathan. Then he paused, head tilting slightly. But you humans call it a witch's den, or worse. I frowned, catching the word. Humans? He glanced at me. You are one, aren't you? I opened my mouth, then closed it again. A cold ripple slid down my spine. The stag. Was he the stag? There's no such thing, I muttered. That's what you think. Thorn knelt beside me, green eyes flashing with something I couldn't name. My breath hitched. My throat tightened as I got a better look at him. Truly looked. He was impossibly beautiful. Long, waist-length red hair cascaded over his shoulders like molten copper. His bright green eyes held flecks of gold, glowing like sunlight caught in forest leaves. Freckles dusted his pale skin. A constellation. He was a vision, a fever dream, something conjured from salt air and moonlight, too perfect to be real. Thorn. I rolled the name across my tongue, tasting it. It felt old, earthy, wild. When I glanced down, the thick bandages around my leg were gone. No blood, no swelling. My skin was smooth, unbroken. My leg looked brand new. Impossible, I whispered, flexing my toes. It should have taken months, surgery, rehab painkillers, and yet, how'd you... Don't ask, and I won't tell, he said. And the smirk that followed curled at the edges of his mouth, pink and wicked. It hit lower than I expected. God, it had been so long since anyone stirred anything in me. I pushed up slowly. The world tilted sideways. Thorn caught me without effort, his grip solid as stone. I need some air, I said, breathless. He nodded. Okay, let's take a walk. Slowly now. His arm remained steady under mine as we stepped outside. The light was blinding, a soft gold that stung my eyes after days in the dark. But when the haze cleared, I stopped breathing. Deer, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, grazing in the tall grass, walking without fear, fawns darting between tree trunks, antlers glinting like branches dipped in bronze. Mist curled along the hills, drifting lazily between wildflowers and the thick trunks of ancient trees. The silence buzzed with birdsong and the far-off rustle of life. It was untouched, sacred. I stood there, stunned, unsure if I'd stepped into a memory or something much older than one. Thorn! Someone was screaming. Thorn! It happened again! People were rushing forward. They were carrying a small fawn that seemed to have its leg caught in a trap. Get her inside, Thorn hissed. I'll have to speak to you later. Make yourself at home, he said. They rushed the fawn inside, and my stomach knotted. They're getting bolder, a woman said. She had the same fiery red hair, but hers practically glowed like a flame. They won't stop hunting you. The door to the cave slammed shut, and I couldn't hear anything more. They? I limped out of the doorway and into the fields, frowning. Was it Ronan that had something to do with this? I watched the cave door seal behind them, a stone slab pressing into place like it was part of the mountain itself. The air hung heavy with tension, and my unease only deepened with every heartbeat. They won't stop hunting you. Those words rang in my ears. I limped forward, still shaky on my feet. The air was damp, pine-scented, and alive with chirping birds, and the rustling of wind through tall grass. Deer milled around me like I was one of them. A few turned their heads as I passed, blinking wide black eyes, but none fled. One even nudged its nose against my hand. I let it, marveling at the softness of its fur. But my mind was spinning. Thorn hadn't said much. He hadn't had to. He was hiding something impossible. The fawn had spoken, not in words, but in sound. Painful, human-like cries that cut straight through bone. I hadn't imagined it. I couldn't have. And the way Thorn and that glowing woman reacted, this was normal to them, expected even. I found a moss-covered boulder and sat. My legs still ached in a dull way, like the ghost of an old wound, but it held. I looked down at my bare foot. The skin was unscarred, untouched. Perfect, like it had never broken, like I had never screamed until my throat bled as Thorn set my bones and poured strange glowing sap across the wound. What the hell is this place? And more urgently, who was hunting them? Was it Ronan? My stomach twisted again. Ronan didn't care about wildlife. He barely noticed when his boots crushed a beetle on the trail. But this felt personal, targeted, not just hunting animals, hunting them. My fingers trembled as I pushed my hair back. I didn't know what they were, or what I had stepped into. But one thing was certain. This place wasn't just some forgotten part of the woods. It was sacred, hidden, and something out there wanted to destroy it. It was nightfall by the time Thorn emerged. He came out bloodied, mouth set in a hard line, eyes blazing cold fury. I was sitting on a rock not too far away when he suddenly grabbed me by the bicep and hauled me to my feet. Hey, wait! You've got 10 seconds to tell me who they are and why your people are hunting us, he spat. I froze. He was shirtless, completely shirtless, skin pale as snow, scattered with freckles across his chest and abs. Jesus. What are you talking about? I tried to wrench free, but he wasn't letting go. You know who's hunting us, he said, and you won't talk, so tell me now. They're looking for the White Stag. That's all I know, I sputtered. They have guns, rifles, but it doesn't exist. It's just a myth. They're paranoid idiots. Thorn snarled and turned away, pacing in a tight line. You know them. That means you can stop them. I don't know anything. I can't stop anything. Hey! He grabbed my arm again, dragging me into a wide clearing, stomping barefoot across the earth. Look, he shouted. There between the streams lay another fawn. This one caught in a trap. This one didn't make it. The tiny body was limp, glassy-eyed, tongue lolling from its mouth. Grotesque, I recoiled. That was last night, Thorn snapped. You were out for 3 days and this was this morning. This has to stop. I'll go to the authorities immediately and... No, Thorn cut in. You must stop it. Me? How? Didn't your mother ever tell you? You are the Heartborn, the mate to the White Stag's bloodline, whether you believe in the legends or not. This is your war now. The what? He laughed in my face and took a step back. You should return to your human realm before things get more complicated. I'll take you back. He turned away, and though I didn't want to find out what the hell he was talking about, I followed him. He led me back to the town, the moonlight dancing on his shoulders, his eyes practically glowing in the light. My stomach clenched at the thought of leaving without thanking him properly for saving me. But what could I really say? He stopped right at the edge of the forest, and so did it. The line where the world changed. I suppose you don't take payment. He just stared at me. Right. Well, thank you for everything. My name is Caelen, he clipped. I know who you are. And who you belong to? What? I frowned. I hated feeling like he knew more about me than I did. Nima was one of us. I almost choked on my breath. Then he was gone, vanished. I whirled around, breath catching, eyes wild. Nima. He knew my fiancée. He knew that Nima had died. Where'd he go? Thorn! I yelled. Thorn! Caelen, oh thank God. I shielded my eyes as my mother, along with the sheriff and several others, came into the woods. She ran toward me and hugged me so tightly I almost lost my breath. Don't you ever scare me like that again. 3 days. You've been gone 3 days. I thought you were dead. I'm fine, I said, hugging her back. Tears burned my eyes. I got turned around or something, I don't know. Greta came next, pulling me into a tight hug. Then Ronan came running over, a hunting rifle in his hand. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Frost was covering his face and his hands were shaking. He looked like he'd been out there for hours searching. Are you okay? I nodded. Thank you. They all breathed a collective sigh of relief. My leg, I think. I hurt it, I said. We'll get you to the hospital in no time. Come along, my mother said. And I let her tug me forward, Ronan on my other side, helping me along. But I couldn't help it. I looked back into the forest, and I felt it calling to me still.
Chapter 4. The Stag. We buried another one. I stared at the small fawn in the ditch we dug, a mess of clotted fur and broken legs. There were too many now, too many weak graves surrounding us, each one marked by crude white crosses painted with moss, paste, and ash. A child's ritual for innocence. Aisling looked furious, her chest rising and falling like a bellow. They don't sense the traps. Their senses aren't developed like ours. I know, I hissed, my voice already shaking with fury. My eyes glowed cold and golden in the dusk. I know that, Aisling. The humans were like parasites, breeding, multiplying, devouring. The lights reached further into our groves with every passing night, their poison spilling into the creeks. They called us myths, but hunted our flesh all the same. And now, they had seen the White Stag. They were hunting me. Because there was not just a shifter, not just an alpha. I was the heart of this forest, the pulse beneath the moss, the wind in the pines. If I fell, we all did. Thorn and Dor, Aisling breathed, using the full name like a plea. Ledoux Toil, please, we must leave this glen. We can't hold them off forever. You can't wait for him. I turned to her, brittle. I will wait. Her eyes flickered. You barely know the boy. I knew his scent before he was born. I growled. Do not speak of what you do not understand. She faltered. Good. I saw the brand on his soul. I went on. The way the wind followed him. He is Neosmo na Dauna. More than human. He bleeds this land like we do. Aisling clenched her jaw. He is unripe, a fawn himself. And yet still he called to me. Still the forest bent to hear him. A low cry rose behind us. Muirin, wailing softly over the body of her younger brother, the dead fawn who never shifted. Her song cracked, high and thin, piercing the trees like bone against bone. I bowed my head. Let the rites be done, I said. Let the earth take him. We covered him with pine needles and rowan leaves. A silent circle. No fire. No words. Just the wind. Behind me, Donna growled deep and low. We should hunt them. Drive the humans out. I looked at him, my gaze cold. We are not beasts. We guard. We do not slaughter. He bared his teeth but said nothing. Caelen tried again, gentler this time. He's gone back to his world, Thorn. The boy. You saw him leave. He'll return. You cannot know that. I do. She stepped back, resigned but bitter. Mar a creden too, as you believe. I looked back to the trees where moonlight had touched his face just nights ago. He had said his name, Caelen, so unsure, so soft, but I had known him long before that. I had heard him in the roots. I'd seen him in the white flowers that bloomed when no light touched. He belonged to this place as much as I did. He was Nima's, and Nima had been one of us. The humans might have buried Nima, but the forest never had. He'd returned to us in silence and ash, and now his mate wandered too close to the truth. I had to protect him. I had to wait, because Caelen was more than some boy lost in the woods. He was the key, and I would burn the world to keep him breathing. And I returned to my cave with my heart pounding, the name Caelen echoing in my chest like a war drum. The moment I laid eyes on him outside that God's forsaken bakery, I knew. He belonged to Nima. The fool, bless his reckless heart, had seen the human and bolted after him like a fawn in spring. No plan, no caution, no sense of what he was abandoning. He left the forest, left his post, and in his absence left Caelen vulnerable. And now he was dead, crushed beneath twisted metal and flames on some black-topped human road, tangled in the wreckage of an 18-wheeler pile-up, a waste of spirit and soul. But the human he chased, Caelen, still breathed, still walked, and the moment my gaze locked on his, I felt it in the marrow of my bones. The blood of a heartborn ran wild through his veins. Nimar must have felt it too. That pull, that ancient tether. It would have drawn him like a wolf to moonlight. But Caelen had no knowledge of the storm rising within. Not yet. Soon, though. Soon the transformation would awaken within him, unbidden, unlikely, painful. The legacy of our kind does not bloom softly in those who are unprepared. It claws its way to the surface, burning through sinew and skin, demanding acknowledgement. He would not be spared. But though Nima bore the same blood, he was not the one. He was not the White Stag. That honor, no, that burden, fell to me. As Alpha, as guardian of this ancient forest, it was my duty to protect not just the land and its creatures, but the delicate thread of power running through Caelen's soul. He did not yet understand what he was, nor what he carried, but the forest knew. The spirits whispered it through the leaves, and I, Thorn, last son of Letan, heard them speak. There's a darkness sweeping over this land, a shadow with fingers stretched wide, seeping through root and stone, devouring light. The old ways are dying, and the humans, parasites, leashes, come hunting what they do not understand. They seek the White Stag, the beating heart of this world, the last sacred thing they've yet to kill. They seek me, and so I cannot falter. I cannot grieve Nima, not truly, not yet. My place is here, at the head of my people, guarding Caelen, even if he hates me for it, even if he runs, because when the dark comes, it will come for him first, and by Lug's flame and the blood of Chernonos himself, I will not let them have him. I found myself outside the bakery again, the scent of baked apple pie wafting to my nose. I wasn't particularly interested in human food, but this type of food always made my belly warm. Caelen came out the back door limping, his face flushed from the chill, dressed in jeans and a flannel shirt, eyes dull. He was stunning. My heart shivered again when I saw him. "You're looking better," I commented. Caelen jumped out of his skin. "Jesus, what the hell are you doing up there?" I cocked my head, staring down at him from my perch above the trash can. I hopped down, studying him. "You haven't been sleeping." "How do you know, Nema?" he said, getting right to it. "He was my fiancé, my lover. I don't care if that disgusts you, but I loved him with all my heart, and you need to tell me." "He was my brother," I admitted. Caelen stared at me like I was crazy. He said his family, you mean Nema, was a deer," I said bluntly. "He was a part of this pack." Caelen breathed hard, his breath clouding in the cold air. "Why didn't he tell me?" "Because it's forbidden," I said again, deadpanned. "Your relationship was forbidden, without the blessing of the stag." "Forbidden? Why?" He breathed. I gritted my teeth. The wind tugged at the hem of my coat as I stepped closer, my boots crunching softly in the snow-mudded gravel. I watched him carefully, the tremble in his hand, the stiff way he held himself. I could see the cracks forming beneath the surface, the ache that hadn't yet found its voice. His grief was like a scent, thick, sour, and clinging to him like a second skin. "Because your bond was sealed without the ancient rites, without me," I said, voice taut. "The White Stag sees all, Caelen. You were meant to be protected, claimed. But Naima broke that law. He thought he could outrun the cost." Caelen's lips parted, breath puffing fast. "I don't understand," he whispered. "What are you saying? That if he had asked permission, he'd still be alive?" "I'm saying," I growled low, "that the magic of our kind is not some river to be waded into blindly. There are paths, Caelen, sacred ones. Nema thought love alone could shield you from the hunters. That was his mistake." My voice softened. "He loved you too much to cage you in our world, but not enough to ask for our aid. That is why he died alone on a stretch of concrete, far from the wild." Caelen's hands clenched. "He didn't die alone." I inclined my head. "No, you were there. He died with you in his heart." He swallowed thickly, blinking fast. "But you're saying I was in danger?" "Yes," I said, "and you still are." I reached out before I could stop myself, fingers brushing the flannel at his wrist. "You carry heartborn blood in your veins, whether you want it or not. The change is coming, Caelen. Nema only awakened it." He yanked his arm back. "Change? What change? I'm not one of you. I'm just a human." "For now," I murmured. "But the forest has already claimed you. It started the moment Nema chose you, and I hesitated, watching the way his eyes widened, the way his pulse jumped in his neck. I'm here to see it through, whether you accept it or not. He stepped back. Why are you doing this? Out of guilt, loyalty to your brother? No, I said, because I am the stag. Because you were never just his. His mouth opened, but no sound came. He stood there, breathless, the scent of sugar and apple lingering between us like a memory. I took a step back, then another. Stay away from the woods at dusk, I said. They hunt under the cover of shadows now, and you shine too bright. Then I turned and vanished into the trees, heart pounding with things I couldn't name.
Chapter 5, Caelen. I headed back inside, feeling numb. Greta had already started on the afternoon batch of desserts and gave me a puzzled look when she caught me zoning out. The bell above the door chimed, and Ronan came in, dressed in a plaid button-up, his handsome face pulled into a practiced frown of concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, like he was trying out empathy for the first time. "I'm fine. Thank you for searching for me." "Any time," Ronan breathed. We were all very scared. He cleared his throat. "Look, I know I talk a lot of crap, but I'd really like to take you out, on a date." I balked. I knew he'd been flirting, but to hear it put that bluntly knocked the wind out of me. I know, you're still grieving Nima," he interrupted, with a sympathetic nod that didn't quite reach his eyes. He was a good guy. I remember him from around town. Quiet, polite, sweet. People liked him. But Caelen, come on, it's time to start moving on. I frowned. "Why do you think that?" "Well, it's been 6 months, hasn't it?" Ronan shrugged like he was pointing out an expiration date on a carton of milk. "And besides, the best way to get over someone is to get under someone else." I almost threw up in my mouth. "I don't think—" "That's right, handsome," he cut in with a grin. "Someone as gorgeous as you shouldn't think. That brain's just getting in the way of your face." He winked. "I'll swing by tomorrow to pick you up. Wear something slutty, nice." He walked out before I could even form a proper refusal. "Did he just insult you and hit on you at the same time?" Greta asked, blinking. "I think so," I said, still shell-shocked. I was locking up the shop, the scent of pumpkin spice, coffee and flour clinging to my clothes, when headlights swept across the glass and a familiar pickup rumbled to a stop. I sighed as Ronan hopped out, boots crunching against the gravel. The belly in the bakery chimed as he walked inside. "You aren't dressed," he said, striding toward me like he owned the damn place. I rolled my eyes. "Listen." "No need for words, honey lips," he cut in with a grin, way too pleased with himself. "Come on, we'll head down to the bar, knock back a few drinks. Might even get you to smile, loosen up that tight little—" "I'm not going with you," I interrupted, folding my arms. "This isn't happening." Ronan blinked, his confident smirk faltering for a split second. "Don't be like that," he chuckled, trying to recover. "I'm doing you a favor. You need to get laid and forget all that weepy Forest Boy stuff." I stared at him. "Wow." "What?" he said, laughing like I was being difficult. "You're hot. I'm hot. We'd be good together. Stop being such a damn drama queen." "I'm not interested, Ronan," I said, firmer this time. "Not now, not ever. I didn't ask for your pity or your charm or your creepy insistence." That wiped the grin clean off his face. He blinked, stepped back, eyes narrowing. "You know what?" His voice dropped into something bitter. "Whatever. Like I want a used-up has-been anyway. You act like you're better than everyone else, but you're not. You're just a stuck-up witch, clinging to a dead guy who probably cheated on you with half the damn woods." I didn't flinch. I didn't move. I just looked at him, really looked, and realized how small he actually was. "Go home, Ronan," I said quietly. His jaw tightened, his fists clenching like he wanted to throw one last insult, but couldn't find words that would hurt me more than I already hurt. He turned on his heel and stormed back to his truck, slamming the door so hard it rattled the glass of the bakery windows. I watched his taillights disappear into the dark. Then I went back inside, turned off the last light, and stood in silence. Maybe I wasn't ready to move on. Maybe I never would be. For some reasons, Thorn's face came to my mind, and my pulse quickened. I locked the door and stepped toward my car, keys clenched in my hand but stopped short. My gaze drifted, drawn, toward the forest. The trees swayed in the wind, but it wasn't just the breeze. Something inside was beckoning me, pulling me. I kept gazing and gazing, the shadows between the trunks shifting, breathing. The movement wasn't random. It was deliberate, alive. The hairs on my neck prickled. The forest seemed to shrink in on itself, leaves curling like shy fingers, branches trembling under the weight of something unseen. Then I heard it. Faint, like breath, against my ear. Anam Kara, Tog Molam. My fingers loosened around the keys. The whisper brushed against my skin like silk, frail and ancient. I didn't know what the words meant, not fully, but they echoed in my chest like they belonged there, like someone had once said them to me under a very different sky. Anam Kara, soulmate. The trees stilled as if waiting, and so did I. That's when I saw it, the white deer. Majestic and proud, he stood near the tree line like a vision spun from moonlight. My breath hitched, my feet moved before I even registered it, pulled by something ancient and tender. I walked and walked, drawn to the beautiful creature, my heart lodged in my throat. Thorn? I whispered. He nodded once, his massive head dipping with grace, antlers rising so high they seemed to comb the stars themselves. He was absolutely stunning. His pure white coat shimmered like snow under starlight, each breath spilling from his nostrils in soft, ghostly clouds. "This is your true form?" I breathed. "It's beautiful." He jerked his head gently, then bent down, offering himself to me without words. An invitation. I didn't hesitate. I stepped forward and slid my hands into his fur, thick and soft, tingling beneath my touch. My fingers pulsed, warmth spreading through me, something like recognition blooming in my chest. I climbed on. The world tilted, shifted, as if I'd crossed a threshold I couldn't return from, and the forest held its breath. We raced through the forest like a dream in motion. Branches blurred past in streaks of silver and shadow, moonlight catching on every twisting limb. The wind whipped against my face, and sweet with the scent of pine and damp earth. Leaves scattered like startled birds, parting in a flurry of green and gold as Thorn bounded forward, his hooves barely touching the ground, his breath steady beneath me. The world fell away. All I could hear was the thunder of his movement, the steady rhythm of his heart, and mine echoing it like a forgotten drumbeat deep in my chest. Then, suddenly we broke through. An open field unfolded before us, glowing softly as if kissed by some otherworldly light. The grass shimmered, every blade glistening with frost and dew, catching the moonlight like scattered stars. It pulsed faintly, as though the earth itself was breathing beneath our feet. I slid from his back, stunned into stillness. "I never knew places like this existed," I whispered. Thorn turned his great head, eyes meeting mine with something deep and unreadable. Then slowly, gracefully, he shifted. His form melted from stag to man in a soft ripple of light, bones and fur, bending and reforming until Thorn stood before me, bare and beautiful beneath the moon. I flushed all the way down to my roots. Naked as the day he was born, he stood tall and unashamed, muscles corded and threaded down his frame like woven steel, his back broad and strong, shoulders gleaming with the faint shimmer of sweat. His red hair tumbled in wild waves down to the base of his spine, glowing like blood and fire in the moonlight. Without a word, he walked forward, slow, deliberate steps through the frost-glazed grass until he reached the center of the glowing field. There, in the cradle of light and silence, he lay down. Right in the middle of it all, arms outstretched, eyes closed, as if this place, this moment was a sanctuary. I followed him, the grass whispering beneath our steps, dewed blades brushing my ankles like 1,000 shy kisses. I lay beside him, cold threading through the field, yet never touching me, somehow kept at bay by his presence alone. Nima and I used to do this all the time, Thorn murmured, eyes on the stars above. I hummed softly, heart aching. Why'd he leave? For you, he said without hesitation, turning toward me. His face was close now, carved from moonlight and memory. Do you see my brother in me? Sometimes, I whispered, if I look long enough. He rose then, hovering over me, his red hair falling like firelight across my cheek. I want to kiss you. I won't, I swallowed. Refuse. I know you won't, he breathed, a ghost of a smile on his lips. I am your alpha, after all. I laughed, but it cracked down the middle, jagged with uncertainty. I don't understand what's going on. You don't need to understand. The heartborn moves on instinct. You won't recognize true power until you're pushed to the very edge. You believe I'm this heartborn? I know it, he said, voice low, reverent, and you will too. He closed the distance between us, his mouth meeting mine with a softness that undid me. It wasn't forceful, it was delicious, slow and deep, like honey stirred into warm wine. I shivered, lips parting under his, tasting his heat, the promise curled in every breath. He deepened the kiss, and I squirmed beneath him, hands rising instinctively to his neck, dragging him down, closer, like I'd waited lifetimes to be held just like this. You're a vision, he whispered against my lips, then added something in Celtic, fluid and sacred, each syllable like a spell spun between us. Our kiss turned heavier, messier. Hunger bloomed where grief had lived. I hadn't been with anyone since Nima died. And now, here I was, beneath Thorn, his brother, trembling as my past and present collided in a kiss that burned like fire. It was wrong, but it felt like home. Tears stung behind my eyes the more we kissed, like my body remembered every hurt, every lonely night, and was finally allowed to let go. Thorn's fingers tore at my jacket, mouth trailing down my neck, leaving a bruise that pulsed with need. He ravished me in that glowing field, with the stars above and the forest watching, until I gave myself to him completely, until there was no more me, no more him, only the pieces we left behind, scattered like petals on the grass. When it was over, we lay there tangled in the grass, my waist bare, his warmth still deep inside me, a lingering pulse connecting us. The forest spun in slow circles above, stars blinking through the canopy like they too had watched us come undone. I felt drunk, intoxicated on his touch, the rhythm we made, the hush of wind and leaf and whispered breath. Thorn leaned over, kissed me again, slower this time, reverent, and then nuzzled into the hollow of my throat, like a creature claiming his den. I smiled, my fingers twisting into his long red hair, still damp with sweat and moss. That was crazy, I murmured, the laugh curling in my throat like steam. He stood, stretching like a wild god returned to form, the lines of his body all curve and sinew, sculpted in light and shadow. The sight of him, naked in the golden hush of the glade, nearly undid me again. The way his back bowed, the cords of muscle coiling like a storm just beneath the skin, the fall of red hair to his spine. It was unfair how beautiful he was. Come on, he said softly, his voice like warm embers. There's more I need to show you. He led me through the woods, the night air cool against my skin, our bodies still humming from what we'd shared. The trees parted to reveal an open field bathed in silver moonlight. There, scattered like shadows in the grass, the pack slept beneath the stars, their forms rising as we passed. Some stirred, curious. Others watched in silence, eyes gleaming with knowing. Thorn took my hand, strong and sure, and guided me to his hut at the edge of the field. It was small and round, woven from bone-white wood and draped in thick hides. He opened the door, and the scent of sage and jimson weed wrapped around me, heady, grounding, ancient. He undressed me gently, stripping away the rest of my soiled clothes, with a reverence that made my chest ache. Then he laid me out on the fur covers, their softness warm against my bare skin. Thorn climbed in beside me, pressing his face to my throat like he belonged there. By the time I blinked, he was already asleep, his breath slow and even, his fingers still tangled with mine. More tears burned my eyes. I kissed his forehead, tasting salt and warmth. "Never leave me," I wanted to whisper, "please." But then Thorn murmured something low in Celtic, the words brushing over me like silk and spellwork, and my body relaxed into his, into the rhythm of his breath and the warmth of a man who felt like he could break me and still somehow make me whole. Chapter 6, Caelen. I woke to the sound of raised voices outside my tent. Thorn stirred beside me, half asleep, but I was already sitting up, heart racing. The flap rustled just before a Siling's voice cut through the early morning stillness. "Caelen, Thorn, wake up, now!" I scrambled for my tunic, half-dressed as I threw open the flap. "Aisling, what's wrong?" She looked wild with urgency, hair wind-tossed, breath coming fast, eyes darting toward the distant tree line like someone was watching. "You need to leave. Both of you. Right now." Thorn stepped up behind me, quiet but alert. "What happened?" "There's a hunting party," she said. "They've spotted Thorn. Traps are being set all over the city. Huge iron bear traps. Guns, dogs, everything. They're coming for you." Thorn stiffened, jaw tight. I felt his hand brush my back, grounding himself. "How do you know?" "I have friends who still send word. They didn't just catch a glimpse of you, Thorn. They recognized you. You're not safe here. You have to head deeper into the woods. Disappear for now." I blinked. "Now?" Just like that. The Siling nodded, eyes shining with fear. "Yes, you don't have time. Pack what you can. Don't stop for anyone." For a second, the air felt thinner. Thorn's arm wrapped around my shoulder. "Go," he said to me quietly. "Get your things. I'll meet you by the old birch trail." Thorn's jaw clenched. "How much time do we have?" "Not enough." She looked between us. "You must go deeper into the woods. Disappear now." My heart hammered, and I swallowed hard. "My mom's still in town. I can't just—" Thorn caught my hand, steadying me. His green eyes burned with something fierce and tender all at once. "You don't belong there anymore, Caelen. You are the Heartborn. You belong with us, with the forest, with me." I blinked, caught off guard. "Heartborn?" He nodded slowly. "The blood of the stag flows in you. It's why Naima loved you, why you're drawn to this wildness. You're not just human anymore. This is your home." I looked away, the truth crashing over me in waves. The pull in my blood, the silent voice calling me deeper into the woods. "Come with me," Thorn urged, "before it's too late." I hesitated. "Let me say goodbye to my mom. I'll meet you there." He kissed me, hard, fierce, like he was trying to etch himself into my skin. "Contact me if you're running late." And just like that, he was gone before I could even ask, "How?" I hurried home, heart pounding in my chest. The house was empty. Mom wasn't there. I left a note on the kitchen table, my handwriting shaky but determined. I had to leave. "I'll contact you as soon as I'm safe." Grabbing a duffel bag and slipping into my hiking boots, I set off toward the forest's edge. But as I drew closer, my blood froze. There, parked along the dirt road, were Ronan and his goons. Their trucks were massive, mud-splattered pickups roaring loudly, tires ripping across the earth and shredding the leaves beneath. They were hooting, hollering, wild with triumph. "We got it! We got the stag!" Ronan's face was twisted, lit up like a beast frothing at the mouth. My heart stopped. I scrambled to jump into the back of the pickup truck next to Ronan. He turned, grinning like a predator, rifle lifted high into the sky, gleaming cruelly in the dappled light. The truck tore through the forest floor, tires clawing at roots and loose earth, leaves flying in a chaotic blur. Every jolt rattled my bones, adrenaline thrumming through my veins. We burst into the clearing, the same one from yesterday, bathed in ghostly morning light. And there he was, Thorn, caught in a massive iron bear trap, the cruel jaws clamped mercilessly around his left leg. His skin was bruised and torn, where the steel teeth bit deep, crimson blood seeping and pooling on the soft earth beneath him. He yelped, a raw, desperate sound, twisting and jerking, muscles straining as he fought the merciless grip. His leg was mangled, the claws crushed bone and flesh alike, grinding and shattering with every twitch. Blood dripped in thick, dark rivulets, staining the grass and soaking into the soil like a wound bleeding into the land itself. Thorn's green eyes blazed with fury and pain, sweat slicking his pale skin as he howled against the trap's iron teeth, every movement sending fresh agony shooting through him. Ronan laughed, a cold, triumphant sound, as he raised his rifle, aiming squarely at Thorn's head. I didn't hesitate. I leapt forward, my hands closing around the rifle just as Ronan pulled the trigger. The bullet tore past Thorn, missing by inches. Adrenaline slammed through me like wildfire. I wrenched the rifle free from Ronan's grip, my breath ragged, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. I fired blindly at the others, panic fueling every shot. They ducked and scattered into the trees, shouting curses that only made my blood boil more. "What the fuck are you, crazy?" Ronan snarled, eyes wild with disbelief and fury. "You bastard!" I spat back. "You're going to pay for this." I swung the rifle hard toward his face, but before it connected, his fist smashed into mine, pain exploding in my jaw. We tumbled off the truck, dirt and leaves scratching at my skin as Ronan slammed down on top of me, rain of fists crashing down. Each blow blurred my vision, blood pounding in my ears, but inside me, something ancient and wild ignited, a scorching fire clawing to break free. A deep, guttural rage bubbled up from my bones, thick, primal, unstoppable. I felt my body fracture and reshape with a shattering force, bones twisting and elongating, flesh thickening and hardening. In a heartbeat, I was no longer Caelen. I was a colossal stag, magnificent and fierce, antlers stretching toward the sky like lightning bolts. I lashed out with everything I had, driving my antlers through Ronan's chest with a brutal, piercing force. His scream ripped through the forest, raw and broken, before he crumpled beneath me. I charged at the others with a roar that shook the trees. They scattered, panic flooding their eyes as they scrambled back toward the safety of the town, fleeing from the unstoppable force I'd become. But my focus was on Thorn, trapped and vulnerable, his leg mangled and shredded by the cruel iron jaws of the bear trap. "Leave me! Leave now!" His voice thundered in my mind, fierce and commanding, cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Never," I snapped back, shifting quickly to my human form, breath ragged, heart hammering against my ribs. I sprinted to the truck, hands trembling but determined as I dug through the mess of gear, ropes, and tools. Sirens wailed in the distance. More hunters, more danger, closing in fast. There was no time. I grabbed a heavy rusted crowbar and ran back to Thorn. Blood was pouring from his leg, soaking the dirt beneath him in a dark, spreading stain. His breathing was ragged, pain twisting every movement. The trap's iron teeth were locked tight, unyielding, but I wedged the crowbar under the edge and forced it with all my strength. The metal groaned and protested, but little by little, the jaws began to loosen. With one final surge, the trap snapped open, freeing Thorn's crushed leg from its brutal grasp. He gasped, sweat and blood mixing on his pale skin, and in an instant, his form shifted, muscles contracting, bone realigning, as he transformed back into the man I knew, the alpha with fire in his eyes. Without a moment's hesitation, we climbed into Ronan's truck, urgency burning in every heartbeat. I slammed the door shut, and Thorn took the wheel, gripping it tight as we tore down the open road. The city's sirens grew louder behind us, but for now, all that mattered was getting Thorn to safety, fast. His blood was fading, and every second counted. The strain of blood loss, his breaths were shallow, ragged. I barely had time to catch my own breath when suddenly movement appeared through the trees, Aisling and the others. "Help!" I screamed. Without hesitation, Aisling rushed forward, pulling a makeshift tourniquet from her pack. She wrapped it tightly around Thorn's leg, the tension biting deep, but necessary to stop the bleeding. Together with the others, they worked quickly, cleaning the wound, applying herbs and bandages with practiced hands. The scent of sage and earth filled the air as they moved with urgent care. Slowly, Thorn's breathing steadied, colour returning to his skin, though the pain was clear in his eyes. We were safe for now, hidden among the mountains, far from the hunter's reach. 3 months later, I watched the fawns leap around the fields, jumping and tumbling, full of life and joy. In my full form, I stood tall and proud, antlers stretching toward the sky like ancient branches. Thorn limped over, his grin wide and easy. He was bigger than me, stronger, the alpha of the pack, but his eyes held something soft as he rubbed his face against my fur. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Better," I muttered, a small smile tugging at my lips. "Thank you. You saved me, so I guess I owe you one." I smirked. "Then how about you officially become my mate?" I took a step back, pretending to consider it. I don't know about that. I barely know you." His eyes narrowed playfully. "So you sleep with me but won't marry me. I'm thinking you're just using me." I laughed, shaking my head. "Maybe I am. Maybe I just like having a big, handsome stag to keep me warm." Thorn chuckled, the sound deep and genuine. "Well, I won't complain if that's the case, but just so you know, I'm planning on sticking around." I met his gaze, feeling something shift deep inside. Hope, maybe, or something new. "Good," I said softly, "because I think I'm starting to feel at home." As I stood there beside Thorn, watching the golden light spill over the fields and the fawns dancing in the breeze, my mind drifted back to the stories my mother used to tell, the ancient tales of deer folk and the great white stag who guarded the forest. I used to think they were just folklore, myths spun to fill cold nights and quiet hearts. But now, I knew better. That story wasn't just a tale, it was mine. The reason I'd always felt that strange pull to the woods, the reason my heart ached with a longing I couldn't name, because I was part of something older, something wild and alive, woven deep into the very roots of this land. And now, at last, I belonged. The end.